In the spring of 1998, Sheriff Larry Stewart decided to investigate the drug scene in Tulia, a small town in the Texas Panhandle. Using funds from a regional drug task force, the sheriff hired an undercover agent named Tom Coleman to conduct a covert sting operation. Early on the morning of July 23, 1999, the arrest finally came. Even Sheriff Stewart was unprepared for his agent's success. In 18 months, Coleman had allegedly made more than 100 controlled buys of powdered cocaine. As the images of the suspects appeared on the evening news, it was clear that those caught in the sting had something in common. 40 of the 46 arrested came from Tulia's tiny black community, which numbers less than 350. More than 10% of the town's black population had been taken down on the word of one man.
The only evidence we had to go by in the trial was the officer who had been there to receive the drugs, to buy the drugs, and we trusted that the officer was telling the truth.
Joe Moore, the first defendant tried, was described by District Attorney Terry McEachern as one of Tulia's major drug dealers. At 57 years old, Joe Moore, a hog farmer, was the oldest defendant. He was sentenced to 90 years for 2 counts of cocaine delivery.
They say we had AK-47, AK-47, them big guns. They say we had new cars, gold chain, new sports wheel. Ain't none of them kids in town even had a car. I'm the only one had an old raggedy car, or that was an old 1985 Oldsmobile.
Gary Gardner, a local farmer, has known Joe Moore for over 25 years and has frequently employed Mr. Moore to work on his farm.
This house here is where Joe Moore lived. He's the man Mr. McEachern called the kingpin of the Tulia drug dealers.
He was made out to be the horriblest, baddest person, in the world. The kingpin, the top man, or whatever.
He never owned any expensive vehicles, any expensive toys, or any expensive house. If he ever made any money dealing dope, he still got it, because he damn sure didn't spend it.
While surprise search warrants were served at dawn on the alleged dealers, not one of the raids turned up drugs, weapons, or significant amounts of cash.
When you think of 46 people being arrested in one day, forget about their color, but 46 people out of 5,000, that's 1% of the population arrested in one day. That would be tantamount to 75,000 people arrested in one day in New York City. The idea that the black community was profiting off the drug trade is ludicrous when you take a look at the economic reality of Tulia. You're talking about people who cannot afford shoes for their children, milk for their children, diapers for their children, or could afford to put gas in a car and take the children to school if they had a car.
In the days following the arrest, the names and addresses of the defendants were published in the Tulia Herald, branding them as dealers before they were tried. Images of the early morning bust appeared on local television news and in the newspapers.
I initially got into it because of a lot of the statements Larry Stewart, the undercover agent, and McEachern made that I thought were prejudicial. Plus, the way that they drug these people in front of the cameras. I guarantee you, if you drug my wife in front of the camera at daylight without letting her comb her hair, she's going to come across not a pretty person, although she's one of the prettiest women I know. And they had facilities up there to protect the dignity of these people. They have a garage up there at the jail they could have drove these cars in and unloaded these prisoners and booked them without doing that embarrassing number. So they had to have done that deliberately. And the only reason I could think of to do it was to influence the people in town that these people were guilty. I don't consider anyone I'm convicted yet. I don't care if they have had 11, 10, 15 trials, because they haven't had a fair trial in front of an impartial group of their peers, and until they do, In my books, they're not convicted. They're just being held illegally.
Since the arrest, Agent Coleman's credibility has come under fire. Coleman was dismissed from his last law enforcement position for theft and abuse of office.
At the onset of the trials, no one knew, none of the defense attorneys knew about Coleman's background, that he had a criminal past, that he was wanted in a different county, his previous law enforcement engagement in Cochran County for theft and for embezzling $7,000 from local vendors.
While working undercover in Tulia, Coleman did not wear a wire during any of the alleged transactions. No video surveillance tapes were made, and no second officer was used to corroborate his reports. Instead, Coleman recorded names, dates, and other details of the transactions by writing them on his leg.
Why is the evidence? He said, I had to write it on my legs. And Lawyer said, we got to have evidence. He said, oh, you know I got to take a bath, don't you?
There's a lot of women in here who's like, well, how did you get 25 years and you didn't get caught with no drugs or no money or no nothing? And I got 5 years and I had possession of an ounce.
Over 25% of the defendants pled not guilty and went to trial.
I'm not going to play guilty or nothing I know I ain't done. I'm not going to play guilty. I don't care if they give me another 90 years. I'm not going to play guilty because I know I didn't do it.
The state rigged it so that Joe Moore's case would go early on in this process. After his case, a lot of people began to get real cold feet. People that believed in their innocence, that knew they were innocent, started pleading guilty because they didn't want to wind up in the penitentiary for the rest of their lives.
I don't know if I'm going to make parole or what, but I got 90 years. Ted McKeegan said I'd be 102 or 3 years old when I get out of here. But I know 102 or 3 years old, I'd be dead.
In Joe Moore's case, it was used as an example to the rest of the blacks. You plead or you go down for life.
That's mainly why I took the plea bargain. I was scared. I wanted to see my family. I had seen how much time they gave other people. I figured they'll do the same to me, which they would. I ain't no different from them. We all black.
Many of the defendants are in prison, their sentences ranging from 20 to more than 300 years. Maddie White is the mother of 4 indicted in the drug sting.
But I told him, I said, if you didn't do it, you stand firm, and whatever they say, because something to come out of this. And we didn't know that this was going to happen, We were just saying, oh, you're going to be okay. Your retrial, you'll get out of this.
Well, Freddie come to me and told me they offered him a plea bargain. They wanted him to plead for 5 years. So he asked me, what did I think about it? And I told him that, I said, you didn't do it, did you? He told me no. I said, well, if you didn't do the crime, then you stand to be right. If it costs you 100 years, then you take the 100 years. You stand to be right. And that's why Freddie didn't take a plea bargain. That's why he went to trial.
To tell you the truth, I don't know, it really just hurts me. It hurts a lot, to know that I'm behind these doors 24/7 over something that I didn't do.
The last trial was in September of 2000. Since then, the exoneration of several defendants has raised doubts about the guilt of those convicted. The indictment against Billy Wafer was dismissed because his lawyer was able to present witnesses and time cards that confirmed that Mr. Wafer was at work at the time the deal was alleged to have happened. Tonya White's case was dismissed when her lawyer discovered bank records proving she was out of town during the alleged sale.
The morning that she supposedly was selling drugs to Coleman, she deposited a workers' comp check. But because she needed $8 for gas money out of that check, she had to sign for it, and they had to time and date stamp the transaction. So we've got her signature, Oklahoma City, at the exact time or thereabout, within an hour of when she's supposedly selling drugs. Now we have a fact, a solid fact, a pattern of behavior that we can prove, and we can link to some of the other things that Tom Coleman has done in these cases, all of which is admissible when it comes down to overturning convictions.
In June of 2002, Zuri Bassett was the last defendant still awaiting trial on Coleman's accusations.
I'm very scared. I'm scared of losing my kids and all the things that I have, and it's scary to even think about it, you know, because just to think that I could go to jail for 20 years for something I didn't do, it's real scary.
After the exoneration of Billy Wafer and Tonya White, the district attorney dismissed Zuri Bassett's case for fear of putting Coleman back on the stand.
This is Zuri Bassett, everybody. Zuri Bassett is the last remaining person to stand trial as a result of the accusations made by Tom Coleman in Swisher County. The state of Texas, as of today, has agreed to dismiss her case on July the 23rd, 2002. This is one battle in what promises to be a long war, a war that's going to continue until every single person that Tom Coleman accused, falsely accused, is free.
The conviction of so many black citizens, most of them under the age of 30, has brought racial tensions in this small town to a head.
I don't know that any of them were unjustly accused. The ones that got off probably should have gotten more than they got.
I'd rather take the word of a man that was, say, the undercover man. I'd rather take his word than the people that he has picked up.
The Hispanic community and the black community, they don't feel comfortable here, which I don't blame them. I don't. Now, being of a Hispanic origin, I don't feel comfortable living here.
Let me say this about it, that there is too many blacks here that are looking for something, a handout. They want something free. They don't want to have to get out and work. They're just too lazy.
They're just like, we don't give a F about you, you know, you just another nigga.
No, like I said, I love Tuya, but now I don't even care. Only reason why, you know, I wish all my family just get up from out of there, because it's not going to get any better. They're not going to make it. It's not going to be any better.
Many believe that the sting selectively targeted young people who had ties across racial lines. Those whites that were arrested in the bust all had romantic relationships with blacks.
That sends a message: don't mess with black people. And if you're black, don't mess with whites. And why is that? I read a paper the other day. It said that we sit together, we drink together, we go to funerals together, we go to church together. Do you see that since you've been here?
There seems to me like there's still an awful lot of difference between the colored. We've got three main groups of people here. We've got the coloreds and the Hispanics and the whites, and there's still a lot of differences in between.
It really haven't changed, because they was doing this when I was a little girl. I remember when we had to go through the back door to get hamburgers or whatever, you know. I remember all that stuff.
When we lived in Fort Worth, I never had my kids coming home, Daddy, they called me a nigger at school. Never had that. And the teacher and the principal say, oh, you never had this happen to you before?
It's no future for them here, the young black people. You're wonderful as long as you're winning our football games, our basketball games. You know, I'll buy you track shoes, I'll help you get clothes, I'll help you do anything. I'll help you go to the game if your mother can't afford it. And don't even think about moving out of this town if, you know, because we want that sports. We come together on sports. Now that's about the only thing that I've seen that can bring to you together.
Like most of the boys that they got were athletes, and now in high school.
And they junior high, and now they're arresting them.
Yeah.
But as long as they was on the football team winning their games, they wouldn't care. On their track team running their race, run boy run, they wouldn't have cared. But now when they graduated, oh, we ain't gonna worry about them no more. We can't help them no more.
If they stay here, they go to prison. If they leave, maybe they can do something
We
different.
got our kids away from here. As soon as they graduate, they were out here. It's just that simple.
We don't even want them coming home.
Don't even come home.
The amount of damage that's been done is really irreparable. If the state gets its way, then we're dealing with people who've been permanently marginalized.
In Texas, if you have a felony conviction, you lose the right to vote and may never regain it. You cannot serve on a jury, you lose access to most welfare benefits, and can be denied public housing.
It's always been hard finding work around here, you know. But now it sure is hard. People tend to mock you as, you know, a drug dealer. You know, we don't want no drug dealer working for us.
The arrests of so many young black people left more than 50 children missing one or both parents.
You see all these black kids walking around. They don't have parents, you know, and the majority of their parents are behind bars due to this drug bust.
And the kids, they just cry and cry. You know, they wake up at night, they want their mama, and they cry and cry and cry. Or in the morning time, they wake up and they want their mama and their daddy, and they cry and cry and cry. And sometimes I'm here by myself, and then I think about them, and then I'm crying. So, you know, it's pretty rough. And it's not only me. I think a lot of the families, they just, when they by themselves, they probably just cry, and they just wonder, you know, why this happened like this.
In the last 2 decades, the war on drugs has become a principal excuse for locking up tons and tons of black and brown people.
I think this is how the drug war has been fought across the country. Since I've been doing some studying on, you know, task forces and how they work, I see that it's a number thing to the biggest part of them. And to get their grants from the government, they have to show progress. And it just seems to be all across the country that blacks are the more that they can, you know, more easy to make the cases on than in the other race. So, you know, I believe that's just the way they're going to fight the drug wars until we do something about it.
A little town like Toyah, why do we have federal money for undercover? We have an undercover in here all the time, trying to, basically, the way I see it, is seduce young people. That's their job, is seduction.
Much of the funding to the local police in small towns across this country comes from the federal government. And the federal government gives out this money to drug task force based on the number of arrests that the task force manages to accomplish. This is something that happened in Tulia, Texas. The number of black people arrested was a statistic sent to the federal government which put money into the coffers of the Tulia police force.
Why you got all these penitentiaries, I mean, every 30 miles? I mean, what is this? This is, if people don't wake up and see what's going on, we're going to be in bad shape here in America, period.
Black families in Tulia have begun to organize in response to the arrests and have traveled across Texas to bring national media attention to the story, raising questions about the way the state's drug task forces conduct investigations.
Our legal objective is to get every single one of these convictions overturned, whether people pled guilty and got probation, whether they went to prison, or whether they've been quietly paroled.
We're going to be working first to get people out of prison and then to really take these kinds of stings to the policy level to try and really affect some reform and get the federal government to give oversight, to demand standards for hiring local law enforcement officers so they cannot run loose and out of control the way that Coleman did in the African American community and the community at large in Tulia.
If my child were arrested on a drug charge, I would hope that there would be more evidence than one person's testimony, some other kind of physical evidence.
Tom Coleman was awarded Lawman of the Year after the Tulia sting. He was fired from his next law enforcement job for inappropriate sexual conduct. He now works as an investigator for a private credit company. 41 people were given felony convictions based on Coleman's accusations. As of August 2002, 14 people are still incarcerated, and 24 others remain in various forms of state custody.
What's happening here in Tulia is a microcosm of what can happen nationally. And you all are at the epicenter of an epidemic of law enforcement inequity and excesses that are national in scope. And that what you do here as a community in terms of organizing, fighting for your rights, and being vocal and reclaiming those family members who've been taken away from you will be a model for Black and brown communities throughout the U.S.